Joining us now, Craig Fugate. He's the administrator of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The president sent him here to help out. How does this compare, Mr. Fugate, to other destruction you've seen in recent years?
Well, unfortunately, tornado damage is pretty intense. Joplin, Tuscaloosa, again here in Oklahoma, similar, very devastating. Houses taken down to the slabs. Schools destroyed, hospital destroyed, cars, just no way that you could think people could survive this.
So what are you doing now? What is FEMA, the federal government, doing to help?
Well, the first thing we did was we sent additional teams, urban search and rescue teams, to support the state. They had a lot of area to cover. The other thing is, President last night did declare these areas disaster areas, so we can start registering people for assistance and getting them some financial assistance if they didn't have insurance, getting them a place to stay. That process started last night, and we're encouraging people to register. Call 1-800-FEMA, 1-800-621-FEMA if you're in this area to register to start that assistance.
And FEMA will be able to help out. You know, a lot of us have been really shaken by what we saw at that Plaza Towers Elementary School, pre-K through 6th grade, literally leveled. What can be done to avoid this down the road? Because kids were killed in that school.
Well, there's a lot of things that we'll do in the assessment. Part of it from the Weather Service is this was an F5 tornado. This is potentially, one of the most devastating things. So looking at how you build safe rooms and school construction is one of the things that has to be taken a look at in the aftermath of this storm.
Did you go over to that elementary school, Mr. Fugate, at Plaza Towers?
Yeah, we just left there. I was with the governor. We went there, several of the other areas in the neighborhoods, as well as the hospital. And when you go there, you can see that literally the walls are gone, roofs are gone, a lot of structural damage, and you can just imagine what it was like there.
Give us a comparison, because you've been through this your whole career, whether in Florida or Katrina, all sorts of disasters. You walk through a school like that, what goes through your mind?
You know, you look at all this damage, Wolf, and you just wonder how people survived, and the fact that the death toll wasn't even higher. And then you think about the children in that school and what it was like when the storm was hitting. Again, it had to be terrifying, and so even though you see it, it's a constant, you just don't believe what can happen and what nature can do. So again, it's just a reminder, we always have to be prepared.
People are watching us right now here in the United States and around the world, and they are moved. Is there one specific piece of advice you have? If people want to help, what should they do?
Again, this is going to be long-term, and it may sound callous, but I'm going to tell you the best thing people can do is be generous with their dollars and give to those charitable organizations that are here not only for the initial response, but they're going to be here for the weeks and months it's going to take to rebuild this community. They're not going to need more stuff. They're going to need your generous donations. A lot of these volunteer groups are going to help folks. We all have a role to play, but that's the best way to help with this type of disaster. Give generously to those volunteer organizations that do disaster work so they can help the folks here that have been impacted by this disaster.
And folks should go to our website, cnn.com/impact, if you want to impact your world. There's some good recommendations right there. Good advice. Mr. Fugate, thanks very much for coming here to Oklahoma. We'll touch base with you tomorrow as well. Thank you. And up next, tons and tons of debris carried in a giant ball by the tornado. What was inside? We'll take a closer look. We're here in Moore, Oklahoma, right outside of Oklahoma City, right over here next to me, the Moore Medical Center, which took a direct hit from this massive tornado. Amazingly, not one fatality inside. Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is here. It's hard to believe when we look at the destruction. Look at the cars just flying all over the place, the roof's destroyed, and everybody survived.
Cars literally going into the building. And this is the second time. You remember in Joplin, the hospital was also in the path of the storm. And here, I mean, again, the second floor literally torn off. I just talked to the doctor who was sort of in charge of the hospital during that time. They didn't get a lot of notice. They had some notice, but not a lot of notice. But, as she said to me, this is Oklahoma. They have a pretty good idea of how to do things. They sort of got everyone, just as you would predict, into the center of the hospital. and they literally were taking mattresses, Wolf, and throwing them over the patients, blankets, anything to protect their heads from shrapnel injuries. And they walked out without a scratch. I mean, staff and patients alike.
Speaking of shrapnel injuries, you found, I mean, the danger, the disaster, stuff flying around.
It's just sitting here.
Iron like this, that can kill you.
What, you know, in a tornado and a lot of these types of storms, you have a primary wave of injuries, which is from the wind itself. The secondary wave, just as you say, Wolf, shrapnel. I mean, feel that. This is, I mean, wrought iron.
Yeah, this is flying around.
200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the types of injuries they saw, where they saw lots of injuries that were essentially impalements from shrapnel. They were taken care of at the trauma center. Crush injuries as a result of that. One thing they didn't see very much of, which I think is good news, is that many brain or head injuries.
Why is that?
They think it's because, in part, people knew enough to sort of protect their heads. And if they were in their homes, to throw a mattress or something over their heads, blankets, anything to try and just protect their heads. I guess it's something, again, I was just asking the doctor the same thing. They're not sure, but it's so ingrained in a part of the country where tornadoes are so common. That's what they think happened.
I spoke to several people who said they put helmets on, even football helmets, just as a sort of a protective device.
Right, and to do anything. And there's also that third wave. So after the shrapnel injuries, the body's actually moving against a hard surface, you know, the wall of a house or something.
I see this destruction, and you look at I'm amazed that 24 people are died. It could have been so many. You think of 50,000, 60,000 people in this community.
I cannot. It's the images. It's hard to do justice on television to what we're seeing over here, but I can't believe it either. I really thought it'd be much worse looking at the images alone. And in many places that aren't prepared for this sort of thing, I think it would have been. But you know, again, give credit where credit is due. A lot of people knew what to do in this situation. They got into a safe place.
This was a bowling alley, and now it's rubble.
That's right.
And you walk around, it's all over the place.
I know.
Sanjay, thanks very much. Sanjay's going to have an exclusive interview later tonight with the doctor who was in command of the ER unit at one of the hospitals here. That's going to be airing later tonight, AC 360, 8 p.m. Eastern. Sanjay, thanks very much. Up next, objects, big and small, sucked up into this tornado that ravaged the town. We're going to get an inside look at the massive twister. The destruction here stretches for 17 miles, a lot of it caused by massive debris. We sent a team to analyze video of the twister to learn more about those flying killer objects. Here's CNN's Joe Johns.
Wolf, we're here with Paul Schlaughter of the National Weather Service. And Paul, if you would, just give us a sense of what this video tells us about the tornado as you look at it.
So we're looking at what looks like a really wide tornado and violent, just based on being able to pick out individual chunks of debris swirling around. And these are large chunks of debris, 2x4s, chunks of trees. In a minute, we'll see the roof of a house.
That's the roof of a house.
There's a whole roof that just came off, getting lifted off the house and then smashed into other structures. That flash right there was another transformer popping. It's taken out a power line and then exploding the transformer.
How far up does this funnel cloud go?
So the tornado itself could be well over 10,000 feet deep. So up here, you see where it's rotating this way. That's what we call a mesocyclone. It's what spawns tornadoes, and the tornado usually is within that larger rotation. And this is a much broader rotation, whereas the tornado is a smaller feature within that mesocyclone, rotating much more rapidly, and that's what does all the damage at the ground, is that part of the tornado.
The stuff out here, obviously, is going to be the first stuff to hit the ground. It will stay up in the air. Any estimation of how long before it comes down, how long it'll travel?
Larger chunks of debris tend to fall, you know, within hundreds of yards. You know, the cars, the large pieces of buildings tend to fall within 100 yards up to a half mile or a mile from where it's picked up. The smaller pieces of debris, insulation, postcards, checks, things of that nature are so light they can be lifted into the middle of the thunderstorm, carried to over 30,000 feet, and then slowly, once the storm moves away and starts to wind down, hundreds of miles later, these checks and the small bits of debris can fall to the ground, and people pick them up, and they find that they did trace it back to this original tornado.
Where are we in the stage of the tornado right now? Is it at its height when you're looking at that, or is it sort of winding down?
This is a mature tornado where, I mean, the whole screen is filled with the tornado, and you can just tell how quickly it's rotating around.
Powerful. It's amazing, that report from Joe John. Still ahead, extraordinary tornado video from a storm chaser. You're going to want to see this. It's coming up right at the top of the hour. Here in Oklahoma, people woke up this morning to hard realities and very, very painful headlines. The Oklahoman newspaper declared this tornado was worse than the one that struck this community on May 3rd, 1999. And the Norman transcript in Norman, Oklahoma, summed up this disaster in 2 words: a nightmare. But there was, yes, there was also a show of the American spirit only hours after the tornado disaster. U.S. Navy reservists deployed from Tulsa raised a U.S. flag on top of the wreckage, a reminder that the town and its people will, of course, carry on. If you'd like to help, you can impact your world. Here's what you can do, and I think you should. Go to a link to the American Red Cross, other organizations helping here on the ground in Oklahoma. Go to our website, cnn.com/impact, cnn.com/impact, and you can impact your world. I hope you do that. As I say, this area, it was so peaceful and beautiful just more than 24 hours ago. Now areas look like war zones. Our coverage continues with Aaron Burnett out front.